In today's video, we're going to be looking at the environmental impacts of processing tar sands. Specifically, we'll be talking about the Canadian tar sands. The locations of these tar sands have been known since the late 1800s. However, up until recently, it's been impossible to extract oil, but during the 1980s, technological advances have allowed us to extract oil from these oil sands. In the past few decades, production has increased exponentially, and once the Keystone XL pipeline is finished, production is expected to continue to increase. The oil sands underlie about 140,800 square kilometers, or about 21% of the province of Alberta. About 4,750 square kilometers of this land has been leased to oil sand company mining operations, such as Suncor and Syncrude. In situ development could occur in an area approximately 30 times greater than the actual mining area. This type of development creates significant linear disturbances, such as pipeline right-of-ways to the boreal forest and lands around it. Lands are leased to companies with no environmental impact assessments or consultations with the stakeholders, including Aboriginal groups. The production of 1 barrel of crude oil by mining the oil sands requires about 2 to 4 barrels of fresh water, even after taking into account water recycling efforts. The water used in production is primarily pumped from the Athabasca River in Alberta. The water used in processing the tar sands accounts for about 76% of the total water used from this river alone. Approximately 370 million cubic meters of water is taken from the Athabasca River every year for production, and after its use, almost all of this water is toxic and is diverted into tailing ponds. These liquid tailing ponds contain naphthenic acids, undercovered hydrocarbons, and trace metals, making it toxic to aquatic flora and fauna. There are currently over 720 billion liters of toxic tailing ponds in the Athabasca oil sands region, and they cover an area of about 176 square kilometers and can fill 390,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Evidence suggests that the pollutants from these ponds are able to migrate through the groundwater system from the containment dikes. It also happens to sit on a majority migratory bird pathway. These birds mistake the huge toxic lakes as a source of fresh water from above, resulting in many deaths and illnesses. The extraction and processing of the oil sands not only destroys vast amounts of land, but also requires improved infrastructure such as roads, buildings, refineries, and extensive pipelines. These structures require natural resources to be built, and the process of doing so emits massive amounts of greenhouse gases. This infrastructure also takes away land from the natural ecosystem permanently. However, by Canadian law, oil sand companies must restore the land to an equal standard to when they started. Despite this, only one company claims to have restored 20% of the land they have used, and it is argued that the same company has only restored about 0.2% of the land. To process the huge amounts of tar sands, you need some massive equipment. Large power shovels weighing up to 100 tons are used for surface mining operations. The tar-soaked sand is then transported using 400-ton dump trucks. All of this humongous equipment requires vast amounts of fossil fuels, adding to the carbon footprint of this operation. Tar sand oil refinement is the fastest growing source of greenhouse gas emissions in Canada. The production and refinement of crude oil results in greenhouse gas emissions in the range of 62 to 164 kilograms equivalent CO2 per barrel. These emissions are estimated to be 3.2 to 4.5 as intensive as conventional crude oil produced in North America. Like I mentioned earlier, production from Canadian tar sands is expected to increase in the future, and with it comes a plethora of negative side effects. By 2030, oil extraction companies expect to triple the production from these mines when compared to production in 2010. As a result, the area will see an increase of 150% in toxic waste production. Carbon dioxide pollution is expected to increase by 250% in the area, and companies will use about 170% more fresh water than that of today. Moreover, there is expected to be a huge decrease in air quality, with emissions of nitrogen oxides rising by 230%, sulfur dioxide by 160%, and particulate matter by 190%. However, not everything about oil sand mining is bad. One extraction company in particular has taken strides in the past few years to reclaim the area and push environmental initiatives. Syncrude, the same company from a few slides ago that claimed to have 20% of its lands restored, uses huge amounts of resources to restore the Athabasca region. Their environmental specialists have been able to restore some of the area of boreal forest and grasslands. However, more importantly, using environmental innovation, they are the first company to be able to almost fully restore wetland areas to the original state. In addition, they are also the first in restoring a fen, a special type of wetland specific to the ecosystem. Due to these efforts, Syncrude won an Emerald Award for Outstanding Environmental Initiatives. On the left of this page are images of the Sandhills Fen, which began restoration in 2012 and finished in 2014. The Sandhills Fen will be monitored by professionals for the next few decades to prove sustainability of the methods used to restore the area. Currently, Syncrude is researching microorganisms and special breeds of fauna to remove the toxicity from tailing ponds so that they can be restored more quickly. However, it is important to note that while they may have made strides in the right direction, they still have not fully restored much of the areas that they have disturbed. Thank you for watching this short video on the environmental impacts of processing tar sands. It is important to remember that these processings of tar sands might have economic benefits, but it also causes massive damage to the environment around it. Thank you, and I hope you learned something.